I'm going to tell you a secret I hardly ever confess. Most startup failures decided their fate long before day one of launching their startup. As someone who's worked with thousands of entrepreneurs of all ages, stages, industries, and degrees of success, I can guarantee you that when I spot that one telltale sign, there's a 95% chance I'm right in predicting their demise. But before I dissect the mistake that may have already sealed your fate, I do want to dispel the mistakes most people attribute to their eventual failures. The economy, too many competitors, an industry shakeup, too low of a marketing budget, too little time to dedicate to the venture, among their other obligations, getting fleeced by shady business partners or an underqualified team. I'm not saying that those aforementioned factors can't have a material negative impact on a startup's progress or success. I can most definitely attribute various lulls and valleys, and even total failures, in some of my prior ventures to a combination of those factors. However, I'd argue that those factors may present obstacles to overcome, and perhaps even financial hurdles that could require an entire rejiggering of a business model to maintain profit in operations. That said, the mistake I'm exposing in this article is far more deadly to a startup's prognosis, and unfortunately, it's one problem for which there's rarely an effective or permanent cure. Now that I've sufficiently scared you into wondering if your startup is secretly on the brink of extinction, let's first talk about whose fault this fatal flaw is. Yes, there's a fault, and it's not necessarily yours as the founder. You're staring at the culprit right now. If you're reading this, there's a good chance you fall into the 99% of entrepreneurs plagued by the same failure-inducing affliction these startup-related publications inadvertently promote. In fact, I'd attribute a vast majority of the blame for this mistake to the explosion of startup-related podcasts, blogs, and social media content. It's not merely the existence of startup-related content that's a problem, and the subsequent increase in the total number of people who aspire to found businesses. Instead, it's the 180-degree flip in the entrepreneurial ecosystem this financially focused business jargon-filled content created. While it may seem great and democratizing that the glut of free entrepreneurship education online pretty much obliterates the need for a six-figure MBA or other financially discriminatory higher education, the ironic truth is that a lack of business knowledge never really was the problem. What do I mean? Take a minute and Google the number of highly successful founders who dropped out of college or perhaps graduated from a mid-rank school with an irrelevant liberal arts degree. It's a ton. But if you're not convinced that formal business education isn't the real key to entrepreneurial success, all you have to do is look up the number of people who obtain business degrees versus the number of founders running successful 7- and 8-figure companies. If you're seeing what I'm seeing, you'll notice that only an infinitesimally small percentage of those book-smart graduates end up building and running profitable companies that last beyond the first 5 or 8 years or attain successful exits. My point here is that the gatekeeping of business education wasn't actually the bottleneck preventing great ideas from becoming multi-million-dollar companies. And likewise, opening those gates doesn't all of a sudden make the startup success rate shoot up from 10% to 60%. How is it that there's more business-building information than ever before at billions of people's fingertips, yet the rates of entrepreneurial success haven't increased at a similarly dramatic incline? I'll tell you why. And if you're one of those financially focused, business-minded people, you probably won't like it. Let's rewind to before MBAs were commonplace for aspiring entrepreneurs and before raising 8 figures as a 20-something first-time founder in Silicon Valley was seen as the aspirational norm. Formerly, financially ignorant business novices would stumble into creating a business sheerly due to an obsession with a product, hobby, or industry they loved. They would spend years perfecting and improving the product or service offering, sometimes with little thought about turning a financial profit. These mythical product-focused founders were more like missionaries, excited to share their gift or passion with the world, even if they'd end up footing the bill or going into debt for it. If this is getting a little too historical, conjuring up images of arrowhead-obsessed cavemen with lines of hunters wrapped around their woodland workstations, hoping to trade animal furs and meats for a new spearhead, have no fear. I can bring us back into this century with modern-day entertainers and celebrities. Believe it or not, this passion-driven practice is how many multimillionaire OG influencers started out, as well as some Hollywood stars. They loved the craft of making videos or the attention of being on a stage, so they innocently pursued the creative outlet their social media or entertainment hobby provided. They didn't think about Oscars or streamies or money or business. They thought about enriching their lives by scratching that creative itch with no expectation of an ROI. That was then. This is now. And that 10 to 20-year fast forward flipped the script real quick. Why? I'd say largely thanks to three things: the internet's vast and rapid dissemination of news, the advent of social media, and the careers it facilitated, the FOMO and jealousy that the internet's financial transparency imbued in us all. In other words, once the non-creatives started to see and realize just how much money their formerly not-so-financially motivated creative counterparts were raking in, they, the financially motivated ones, wanted a piece of the pie, of course. Stop taking this advice and filling this gap. All that tech evolution-related preamble leads me to the fatal mistake the more business-minded, and soon-to-fail, hopeful founders of today commit: prioritizing market needs and lucrative industries over their own innate interests and passions. Here's the harsh truth. Your business school professors, friends, and loving family members surely won't tell you. If you opt to build a business around a topic, product, service, or industry that isn't your passion, or that you aren't naturally above average at, you're probably going to get slaughtered by the competition. There are just far too many similarly driven founders who are innately gifted at or passionate about that topic, product, service, or industry, so much so that they'll have an unfair advantage nearly impossible for you to beat. Oh, but it gets worse. I'll admit that some people could successfully override their personal interest in a topic by outsourcing those tedious tasks and becoming a glorified product manager with the fancy title of founder and CEO. That can 100% work. And I've even done this for some of my prior ventures. The problem, though, is that you can easily build a business that starts to feel at worst like an underpaid job, or at best, like an annoying obligation you string along only for the cash it brings in. The consequence of that attitude towards your startup is that if or when things turn sour, either due to an isolated company hiccup, an industry disruption, or an economic downturn that makes this venture temporarily a lot less financially attractive, you may find it hard to pull through. At this point, you may face one of two options: scrap it altogether, if it was never financially viable. Try to sell it, though not for a life-changing sum, but hopefully for enough to make the time and resources you've put in worth it. Sometimes it isn't your company, it's you. Sometimes, though, an entrepreneur can honestly lose the passion or interest they once had for their business due to sheer boredom and changing priorities over time. I've witnessed this multiple times with friends running companies touted by some of the biggest celebrities in the world, featured in acclaimed magazines, who found themselves desperate to escape the industry, despite their origin as a former passion project. Turned profitable. In case you're wondering what's the hint or clue that it's time to seek that exit, I'll sum it up with two indicators of the impending end. Dread, corner cutting. Once you dread your business, whether or not it ever was your passion, that's a key warning signal you shouldn't take lightly. Likewise, once you have the desperate or even lazy urge to cut corners to hang on to as much profit as possible, at the expense of your offering's quality and customer experience, it's another sign that perhaps you're no longer the best entrepreneur to captain this ship unless you're seeking a Titanic-esque end. Everything is monetizable, but not by everyone. Decades ago, you could make the case that some products, services, topics, or industries just didn't provide that lucrative of an opportunity for most entrepreneurs. Today, though, in the same way the internet has given everyone the impetus and book smarts to attempt entrepreneurship, it's also given almost all of us an array of avenues to monetize pretty much anything. Thus, within the confines of the law, of course, I'm going to stand by the bold declaration that almost everything is monetizable. However, at the same time, conversely, not everyone is capable of monetizing everything. Before you jump at a shiny, high-paying opportunity or try to jump on the bandwagon of the next industry taking off on exploding topics, I'd ask yourself the real tough question of just how interested you actually are in that product, topic, or industry at your core. Sure, you can learn to like or maybe even love something, but you're likely going to see a lot slower growth and progress than the people who like or love it from the get-go. Building, growing, and sustaining a successful business over time can be a trying endeavor for even the most skilled entrepreneurs. Why make it harder by starting 10 steps behind all your inherently passionate competitors?